Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna.
And I'm Raymond Yeung. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Yeung warns of national security issues due to continued interference by external forces.
Chief Executive promises measures to ease housing problem and help young people in tomorrow's policy address.
French magazine defies Islamist radicals by putting cartoon of Prophet Muhammad on cover again. Chief Executive Yeung has warned of national security implications because of continuing interference in Hong Kong affairs by external forces after last year's Occupy protests.
He didn't offer concrete proof, but insisted the evidence is already in the public domain to look at, and the government has the duty to get to the bottom of it.
His allegations were ridiculed by pro-democracy figures. Before heading into his weekly cabinet meeting this morning, Chief Executive Yeung was asked about a speech he made yesterday, which was largely ignored by the local media. He had claimed there were clues indicating interference by external forces, such as foreign governments, in last year's mass protests and road blockades by people demanding greater democracy. He accused them of continuing their meddling in local politics even after the protests ended, and stressed the need for a full analysis of the role played by external forces behind the scenes. Citing information from emails yesterday, Yeung also accused Occupy Central leader Benny Tai of accepting foreign funds. He stuck to his guns today, but refused to elaborate on the clues to back up his allegations. Yeung insisted that a large amount of material had been disclosed to the public over the past year about the involvement of external forces in the Occupy movement, and the public could look it up. He said the people identified in the relevant documents had not disputed the evidence, reflecting its accuracy. The chief executive went on to warn the public to watch out for foreign interference in local affairs and politics. It raises national security issues, and because it's a matter that concerns the entire country, it's worth paying attention to, he cautioned. One of the first to ridicule Yeung was Benny Tai himself, saying the proof cited so far was nothing. Labour Party leader Lee Cheuk-yan accused Yeung of libel and challenged him to provide concrete proof. Lee accused the chief executive of using this tactic to shift the responsibility for Hong Kong's political crisis to foreign countries. Civic Party lawmaker Kenneth Chan accused Yeung of spreading white terror against pro-democracy forces.
The chief executive has promised measures to help solve Hong Kong's housing problems in his policy address tomorrow, with the focus on providing more subsidized flats.
He's also insisting that his government will provide more opportunities for young people who are unhappy with current policies. ATV's Rachel Yeung reports.
Community groups held different protests today, hoping to get their voices heard on the eve of the chief executive's policy address tomorrow. Some were demanding a universal retirement protection scheme, calling on Yeung to at least set out a timetable in his speech. Others urged him to help nannies improve childcare services in communities. But the chief executive's priority at the moment is housing, which has been identified in recent surveys as the public's biggest concern. Yeung acknowledged today the immediate need for his administration to increase the supply of subsidized housing. Referring to the recent rush for home ownership scheme flats, the chief executive said it reflected the fact that soaring prices were making it unaffordable for the middle class to buy homes in the private sector. There's been speculation that he will make HOS flats more affordable and boost the sale of public rental units, especially keeping young buyers in mind. He's also expected to increase the supply of land with rezoning proposals. But Yeung cautioned today that building more affordable homes requires more land and construction workers, both issues that require support from a divided public. He also addressed concerns about unhappiness and dissatisfaction among Hong Kong's youth, which was reflected during the Occupy protests last year. Yeung insisted he's still emphasizing policies to nurture the youth and provide them with opportunities for development, as they are the future of Hong Kong. Tight security will be in place at LegCo tomorrow in case of rowdy protests when Leung makes his annual speech. The LegCo president announced new rules for demonstrators from tomorrow onwards.
With one minor change, instead of requiring all members of the public using our public demonstration areas to leave the area by 11 p.m., we decided that if a council meeting is still going on, the protesters or demonstrators can remain in the area until 1 hour after the adjournment of the meeting.
The chief executive will deliver his policy speech at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We will be broadcasting it live here on ATV World. Rachel Yeung, ATV News.
The chief executive says his government is serious about fighting those responsible for yesterday's petrol bomb attacks, targeting the home and headquarters of one of his strongest critics, Jimmy Lai.
Police are hunting for at least 4 people in connection with the attacks, which have been condemned as attempts to muzzle the media. ATV's Wong reports.
After looking at security camera footage, police believe at least 2 people, a petrol bomb thrower and a getaway driver, were involved in each of yesterday's 2 attacks. Early yesterday morning, a Molotov cocktail was hurled at the gates of media tycoon Jimmy Lai's home in Ho Man Tin. At around the same time, 2 petrol bombs were also thrown at the Cheung Kwan-o headquarters of Lai's Nix Media Group, publisher of the popular and openly pro-democracy Apple Daily newspaper. The 2 getaway vehicles, which had been stolen earlier, were later found abandoned and torched. There were no injuries, and police said the attacks appeared to be warnings rather than attempts to harm anyone. Lai is a strong democracy campaigner and was a prominent fixture during last year's Occupy protests. He's been the target of similar attacks in the past, which have been widely condemned as attempts to intimidate and silence the media. The Pan-Democrats have raised concerns that authorities are in no hurry to find out who's responsible because the victim is an opposition figure. But Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying insisted today that his government is determined to crack down on violent crime. Hong Kong is a society ruled by law and order, and the government takes illegal activities seriously, no matter who the acts are against, Leung said. He urged anyone with information to report to police so that they can arrest the petrol bomb throwers as soon as possible. Police are also hunting for a man who drove off after an undercover officer tried to stop him from stealing bundles of newspapers, including the Apple Daily in Hong Kong yesterday morning. The officer fired 4 shots, but no one was hit. Wong, ATV News.
The number of